Awesome, you guys. Okay, we're so pumped to have everybody here. Let's get this started for us all. Okay, great. Well, I had to choose between listening to getting the music going here or listening to Alex. So I guess we went with Alex instead of the music today, but we're so pumped and so excited to have everybody here today for this webinar. And I'm going to share my screen here with you guys, and then we're going to go from there. So sharing screen, and present. All right, you guys, the purpose of today's webinar is how to become a fraction sales manager. And it's a pleasure for me to be here today, and always great when we can join with Albie to do some amazing things. And one of the things that we have noticed that people have been asking me for the longest time is, how can I do it all? At what point do I hire a sales manager? And today we're going to help you guys with turning you, whoever is attending this call today, as a fraction sales manager. And we're going to give you some tools to help you with all of that. So the purpose of today, to introduce a system for supporting restoration owners to become fraction sales managers and help their team become sales driven. That's the purpose for today. And results. Participants will be taught a systematic approach to sales management. Participants will be shown simple tools used by the experts to be implemented immediately to hold their team accountable. I'm going to be looking at a chat as much as I can because I want this to be interactive. Because guess what? I wish I was here in a room with all of you guys. That would be so much more fun, but we might have some invite for you, some special invitation at the end of the day, the meeting today, so that we can come together to collaborate. Until then, your emojis are all are the only way for me to feel the love. So yes, Alex is in Chicago and I am in Salt Lake City. All right, so a little bit about me. That's for those who needs to know who's speaking before they can pay attention, start taking notes. 27 years in sales, B2B, B2C. I've been training for 25 years. Some other things here that you guys can read about me. It's kind of tough when you have to talk about yourself. But one of the things that I can tell you guys is this. I have learned very early on that we can never duplicate people. We can only duplicate systems. And because of that, that's why I'm excited to share with you guys all that I have learned throughout my career and 27 years. I know some of you are like, it's impossible. She looks so young. That is because of Botox, people. But jokes aside, I have started really young, and I opened my first business when I was 17 in B2C. And that is when I learned the power in metrics. That's when I learned that if we don't have a system that we can share with people to get people to buy into the same recipe and start applying that, then we really don't have anything that we can share and scale. So my job today is to be an open book. We are going to have Q&A. You can Q&A away as we go about things. It just might take me a minute or two to read the chat as we're doing this webinar presentation. But I am an open book, and I'm going to share with you guys that which I currently do to help companies as a fraction chief revenue officer, as a sales expert, as a restoration industry expert, but to give you some of the logistics behind what I do so that you know at what point you can do that yourself versus when to bring somebody else to help you with that, right? That's what we're going to be doing today. Alex, do you want to chime in? Do you want to say anything else to the team? Because people are here because of you. You know that. Like, they hear that you're going to be on a call. Everybody signs up. That's why we have 46 people right now here. So do you want to?
Yeah, there's a lot of unknown names here. So I think they're all here for you, Ricelli. But I'll happily be the moderator and
Awesome.
make this responsibility of making sure the chat gets answered. I'll take that up. I've got it up here.
Awesome.
And that way you don't have to worry about it. And my question back to the audience before we get started is, what is the one thing that you're looking forward to the most to learn out of this one webinar? I could also reframe the question of, what's the biggest problem related to fractional sales that you're running into? Post to the chat below. And I am going to make people interactive. because I've been on these webinars before that were overly interactive, and I felt like I would always walk away with so much more info.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you guys write it down, because like Alex said, you know, where focus goes, energy flows. So if you write down what you're trying to get out of this, I promise you, it will enhance your chances of finding the answers to your questions, right? Versus, you know, some people, when we start a training session, they're like, I don't know, whatever I learn, it's great, you know. So be very strategic about what you want out of this today. And that's why I'm going to start with some of the questions of my own. Have you ever wondered if your sales team was doing all they could to be successful? Have you ever felt frustrated with their performance or had challenges getting them unstuck and buying into new ideas? Or felt like you lacked the tools to hold them accountable? Those are some of the things, some of the questions we're going to answer today. And our goal for today, again, is to help you to empower your team so that they can be successful, eliminate this frustration, eliminate the challenges, right? That a lot of people have with getting their team to buy into new ideas and what they need to do to be more productive, and be the kind of owner that can help people produce just a bit more. That's what we're going to be covering today. So if you have gone through any of these challenges, you're not alone. So you're here with a purpose, that we're going to be joining us to share some of these thoughts. And I can't believe that my good friend James McDougall is here too. He's probably going to be in one of these webinars, you guys, and you're going to learn so much from him too. The guy is amazing as well. All right. Okay. So once upon a time, I was managing 400 plus restoration companies with over 1,000 sales team members and traveling five and a half days per week. And it was crazy, because when I was a representative for a franchisor, that was my responsibility, and that's what I had to do. And for somebody to look at it, you know, I have had so many conversations where people look at this and they're like, it's impossible. Well, the word itself says I'm possible. So it can be done, right? And a lot of times it's amazing, because people use their lenses to project what they can and cannot do in other people. So before you go with, I don't think I can do certain things, I would suggest you to borrow my lenses today, right? So that I can give you my prescription, if you will. I do wear contact lenses, but to give you my prescription of how these things can be accomplished so that you can produce the results that you want to produce. But that was my reality, you guys. And what I've learned from that, number one, is that you can't redecorate your house, raise kids, be a good wife, and maintain a social life being away 5.5 days per week. That was the first lesson. I remember we had just bought this home where we live in right now. And I told my husband, like, okay, so I want to put curtains and I want to do this and that. And my husband said, when you move back in, you can do that. But while this home is more like a frat house with 3 boys, right? Him and our 2 boys, he was like, we don't need any of that. So jokes aside, that was one thing that I've learned. I could do it, but it took me not being able to do some of the other things that were important to me. But what I've also learned is that you don't manage people. You manage systems, and you coach people on how to manage themselves while hitting the metrics you have set within those systems. That's what I've learned, right? And that for me was quite powerful, because we talk a lot about managing people, and learning that we can't duplicate we can't duplicate people, we can only duplicate systems, is what has helped me to see that the number one goal of any manager is to find a way to help each individual in their team to accomplish their personal goals through the job they have. When you can get your team, I'm going to say that again in a different way, and hopefully you guys can absorb that and write it down and process that in your own words too, so that you can buy into this message. When you can get your team members to see that the only way for them to become who they want to become in their personal life or their personal lives is through the position they have with your company, you're going to see that people are more productive. They are more engaged, and their levels of satisfaction through their position increases. And we talked about that during our last webinar, getting to the yes. You guys, have access to the recording. We also talk about that during our sales mastery boot camp that we did last month in Chicago. We're going to have another one coming up. And we see how real this is, to give people the opportunity to have something within their job that gets them fueled, that gets them pumped up, right? So if you until we can understand that we don't manage people, that all that we can do is coach them on how to manage themselves, you're going to see that you're going to be having the same conversations over and over and over again with your team members to try to get them to do the basic things. Because here's the other thing: common sense is not that common, right? And I have a lot of managers and a lot of people that I work with, a lot of my clients that they say, and I'm like, did you get their buy-in to this message? And they're like, well, it's part of the job, they better do it. And I'm like, yeah, but they haven't been doing it. So what is the disconnect between what you expect and what people are actually doing? And are you frustrated? And are you getting people that are more frustrated as well? And because of that, it's not going anywhere for anybody, right? All right, anything interesting in the chat box that I should address, Alex, so far? Nope. Okay, great. All right. If you can't manage people then, so if you cannot manage people, your systems need to be on point. You're planning, you're organizing, you're controlling the metrics, you understanding the metrics, right? And it's funny because a lot of times I have those conversations and I ask people, I'm like, so what is the process? What do you expect out of your salespeople? Well, they're going to go out there and talk to people. I said, great. How many people? Well, I don't know. Lots of people. Lots is not a number. Who are they going to be talking to? I don't know. Anybody that can give us a job. All right. So are they going to start knocking down all the doors, within a neighborhood and expecting that, at some point something is going to happen? And that shows me the lack of planning, organization, and metrics that we see lacking so much within the industry. And that's when people say, well, I need another person to come in and implement these systems. I can tell you guys from experience, if I don't get the buy-in from the owners, when I come in as a consultant to manage the team, to organize the house, even with all that I know, I can't do anything because the boss himself did not buy into the fact that these are the things that we needed to make your team successful. Right? So that's quite important that we know what is needed so that we then know what needs to be done and how to hold people accountable to these things. So you need to get your ducks in a row and get the house organized before you can start working with your team. And if you can't manage people and you need to mentor them, how are you going to do that? You're going to do that through guidance, through motivation, through emotional support, and through role modeling. What I love about the difference between a manager and a mentor is that a manager tells you what to do. A mentor says, let's go and do it together until I know that you can do it on your own. And that is why, not going off topic, but one of the biggest things that I suggest to anybody that hires a business development manager is to onboard them in a way that the first 2 weeks that they have on the job, they learn every aspect of the company as if they were to buy the company and become the next CEO. You don't need to know the specifics of everything, but you need to have a basic understanding of everything that goes on within a company. And if you're going to have somebody sell your services and be out there as the face of your organization, it is very important that that person has the basic understanding of how the product is delivered, right? Any thoughts, comments so far, you guys? Are we all on the same page? Alrighty. Okay. So how are we going to mentor people through metrics? So the system, you need scorecards with clear key performance indicators. And what are key performance indicators? That which will let us see whether or not what people are doing will produce the desired outcomes, right? Or the desired outcome. That's where we start with. And that's when I usually tell people, you don't start at the end, but you need to start with the end in mind. And how do you start with the end in mind? You know what you expect out of that person. You know the sales that they need to produce, right? The type of revenue that they need to produce for your company. And you give them the recipe that has been proven and shows that that goal will be accomplished through this type of activity. Okay. The system 2, accountability and support. If you don't hold people accountable, what tends to happen is that people stop doing the basics. For example, documenting activity. When people are not being held accountable, they tend to slack off on activity. What's the point? Why am I going to type everything up? Why am I going to go to Albi and document everything that I'm doing if nobody's reading it to give me support or feedback? That is another thing that I highly suggest. If you have a CRM, and I believe a lot of people here already in Albi are Albi users, make sure the activity is being documented. And what I usually share with people about documenting activity is that, number one, they are for the individual, for the BDM, right? The business development manager. Because when you're managing putting a big group, a big number of people through your sales funnel, it is important that you know and you document the conversations. Otherwise, what tends to happen is that you forget. So I usually tell them first, because of amnesia, right? You don't want to forget. I have a funny story one time trying to build rapport with an account. This woman tells me that she is going to go to the Bahamas for her wedding anniversary, this and that. There's a whole story behind it. All I heard was beach, didn't write anything down. Come back a month later. I'm like, how was Hawaii? She was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you're pumped up about Hawaii. And she was like, the Bahamas. And she gave this look of like, seriously, you couldn't remember this one thing. Right. So write it down for yourself so that you can have that call continuum, so that you can break the ice with something that's personal, so that you can have those conversations. Right. And for the company, because at the end of the day, the only thing, if you're planning on ever selling your restoration company, what you are going to sell are the notes, are the information. You're not going to be just selling equipment in a warehouse. You're going to sell the experience that clients have had with us, those referral sources, what they have been able to produce as we work together. That is what you're going to be selling. And if you don't do that, you are robbing yourself from increasing value to your company. But if you don't expect people to do that either, and you think, well, they're just going to do it because it's part of the job, I'm telling you, it doesn't just happen because it's part of the job if there's no accountability and support. You also need to speak from experience. One of the things that I'm going to suggest in a few slides from now is have a number of accounts as an owner that you're going to be managing. Assign some hours during your week where you're going to be actually doing the role so that and you can speak from experience. You can say, I know what it takes to have this work. And let me tell you again, as a consultant, the owners trust me, and I tell them what is required of the business development manager. And still, there are situations where the BDM doesn't like the recipe that I give them, and they say to the owner, it's not possible. And because the owners have never actually done the job, it becomes that he said, she said, and I'm like, look, you can either trust me, who have done this for 17 years in this industry, or you can go with whatever version of what's being told right now. And I can guarantee you that as soon as we compromise the recipe, we're going to compromise the results. So speak from experience. Provide support, we talked about it, and delegate responsibilities. There are things that an owner can delegate to a BDM to do that will help them produce more results that you don't have to personally do. And one of the things that I love to, I'm quoting myself here on this one, but you can't coach a sport you have never played, but you also can't be the coach and the player during the same game. It's just the reality. And that's why sometimes we have people saying, well, I have this person in my team that I want them to be the sales manager. I'm like, not going to work. Well, of course it's going to work. I'm like, not going to work, because they can't be the player and the coach during the same game, because the skill set for that is different. I'm not very good in sports analogy, you guys, but I'll tell you guys this, because I grew up in Brazil and soccer is a big thing in Brazil. I have never seen a soccer coach that had never played soccer before. And I have never seen that coach in the middle of World Cup just saying, okay, you guys are not doing a good job. I'm taking it on my own hands to do it, right? And interfering with the game. It doesn't work. And we know that. Whatever sport you like, you know that it doesn't work like that. But at the same time, you need to have healthy expectations, because it's not to say that it has never happened before, but I have seen great players, great salespeople that once they became managers, they compromised that performance, their own performance, and they were superstars. And they couldn't give the support to their team if they were superstars and they wanted to continue to be superstars, because there's an element of competition right there, right? In one of my projects, on the other hand, the top player in our industry convinced his boss to hire me, because he said, I don't want to do what she does, because I want to continue to do what I'm doing, right? And right now, with me sharing these things with you, I want to empower you as an owner to see the reality behind managing your sales team. All right, questions so far? Anybody? No? All right. Maybe you guys either all know all of this stuff, or I'm boring you to death. I'm hoping is somewhere in the mix. I don't know, in the middle. All right, so let's look about responsibilities, because it's important that we understand what people are responsible for doing within the position. And the responsibility of your sales team, of your business development team, is to generate leads through strategic local relationships. That's their job, right? And that is important too, because if you're planning on hiring somebody, again, I consult with a lot of people that tell me, Ricelli, what do I say when we are going to be hiring these people? I tell them, look, if you're going to be hiring people, you need to make sure that they understand what the position expects. They need to generate these leads through strategic local relationships. Plumbers, property managers, insurance agents, first responders. You guys know all this stuff, right? Maintenance managers, superintendents, government facilities, contractors, adjusters. And it's important that they follow a scorecard so that we know that what they are producing will be linked to the results that we're foreseeing later on. That's very important. What they are also going to be doing is act as a brand ambassador with networking events, social media, engagement, emails, and all these things. So in other hands, you're hiring somebody not to be seen by you, but to be seen in the marketplace representing you. Be very careful with who you hire, because this is one of those positions that I say you really need to trust the person that's representing your company. They are not being seen by you, but they need to be seen by the marketplace, right? So one of the suggestions, and this is not about recruiting, but this is part of turning you into a fraction sales manager, is to understand that it's your job to see how this person presents themselves on social media, right? It's important that you trust that that person is doing what they need to do, because the way they represent your company is how people are going to see you. And the way people are going to see you is going to be the message of whether or not they are going to do business with you. Right? I remember it was, I don't know if it was Richard Branson that said, or if it was Jim Rohn, the idea of, what happens if you train a person and then they leave you? I think it was Jim. And he said, what happens if you don't train them and they stay? Right? What are the risks for you associated with not giving people the tools that they need to succeed and to represent your company well? Some of the additional things that they might need to do, it's work with the budget of the department. How many times people have a great idea and they say, well, we want somebody to, there's this particular event that I want to do. Okay, come to our sales meeting ready to discuss what we can potentially get from this event. Give people the tools so that they can start asking questions before they join a networking event, before they do any of these things, because it's all part of the cost of job acquisition through that person. So What I like to say is that a business development manager is the CEO of their own book of business. And as the CEO of the restoration company, your job is to empower that CEO of their book of business to represent you to that book of business the way that you would, or that you want them to represent you. Okay. All right. So these are some of the responsibilities. Can you guys think of any other responsibilities that you have seen that you expect from your business development people that maybe we should discuss here? Because I have seen people expecting that they are going to be doing a lot of digital, and then we have a digital strategist that can do that better and free up their time. I love that Alex posted something, I think was earlier today, on, how much can you delegate within your business, right? So that you free up time to do that which produces the most value that only you can handle, right? Any other thoughts? Give people the tools. Okay.
What about forecasting, Ricelli? I mean, one of the things that I would make them and hold them accountable to, it's like, okay, great. Or the sales goal is that you're going to bring in, I don't know, whatever, $5 million of opportunity, which maybe is $2 million of work. Forecast it down to me by month. Well, how does that equate to down to how many leads you're bringing in? How many referral parties are you calling? How many activities am I expecting you? And kind of put them in ownership there.
Absolutely. And that starts with that plan of execution that ties activity to revenue, right? And then they have to be accountable to that. And we need to look at those metrics every single week during our sales meeting, right? So that we can make adjustments every week instead of once a month when we review a scorecard and everybody seems surprised that they are not hitting their numbers. Yeah, absolutely. Forecasting. Another thing on forecasting too, I'm glad you brought that up. Like, look at what has been previously done by that person and see the association between accounts that they are managing and results that are being produced. And then see what adjustments we need to make for more prospecting so that we can adjust their numbers accordingly as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Also, our friend James said that he has his business development people act as the liaison between the adjuster, agent, and expectations and ops. So I assume, like, if there is a fire, if there is a screw up on our company's behalf, they're the liaison going back to the adjuster or the agent who's the referral party taking care of them. And then it looks like Robert Simmons says that he has his BDR people participate in trade shows and local trade associations and also community functions, which I think we kind of wrapped up into the networking events, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that I would say on this before we go on is that there are different types of attendance to events. As a brand strategy, you want to get brand recognition within your marketplace, and a strategy of obtaining more leads. And we need to be careful with those, because sometimes when one of the things that I always suggest is do not join any networking event without previously to signing on the dotted line, knowing all that you can know about the people that attend that event, visiting with them personally, and qualifying and quantifying them. Otherwise, those can be time suckers. And one of my accounts, we were looking at their numbers of attendance for a BNI last year, and the revenue produced against the hours that were spent produced something along the lines of $3 and some cents per hour, right? Even Jamba Juice pays more than that. My 14-year-old son makes more money than that. So we need to be strategic on those two, unless, of course, we need that brand presence within the community. And then we need to measure that against brand exposure, which is we cannot always track the same way. And it's important that we look at these things. All right. Awesome. Okay. Fantastic. So for me, there are only two ways to measure success for a business development person. And you guys might want to write this down, take screenshots, whatever you want. Revenue and activity that helps me forecast future revenue. That's it. Right? Revenue, it's easy. What they do in sales, I know that has to do with their number of accounts, their number of leads, number of jobs, average job size, and that's going to produce their revenue per year. But if I can't track that yet because they are within their first 90 days, or they're expanding in a different territory, or they are expanding into a different market segment, all that I can have is the activity. And I have seen a direct correlation between activity and results. And those have to do with the number of accounts. So it has to do with route stops, closing meetings, sales funnel questions, technology that they do, the team engagement, brand message, core values, and participation on meetings. And that all leads to me also telling the ops team what we can expect now that we have this person coming in, right? Be ready, because in 90 days, this person will be producing 8 to 12 leads per month on top of what we are already producing, right? Or if we're bringing in 3 new people for the same position, we're multiplying that by 3. And I'm saying, okay, 36 new leads. That's what we're on track for seeing in the next 90 days, right? So let's be strategic about these things because they impact ops. And if ops is not ready to deliver, then we have a problem, right? Okay.
So Matthew, sorry to interrupt, but Matthew shared a story. Matthew Castleberry, he was a Navy recruiter and he tracked all activity. He had a monthly goal of the activity that was broken down by week, and it was reviewed daily. And then if those monthly goals weren't hit and the outcome wasn't hit, then there was coaching in place that was performed. I'm a strong believer in transformational leadership, which is outcome measure coach. So as a leader, you're telling your people, hey, the outcome is X amount of route stops per day, X amount of leads per month, X amount of revenue per year, whatever it would be, and then meeting on a weekly basis to measure it using your CRM or whatever you're going to use, and then coaching. Okay, well, why did you not hit those things? And then in come the coaching. So I thought that Matthew's story was very interesting. I don't know if you want to add more to that.
Well, I just want to add that Matthew is brilliant because I had a conversation with him and it was like, I remember talking to him. It was our first conversation. We're like, people don't track stuff and then they don't know what it's going to be produced, what they can produce, right? And that's a big thing, is to be able to track so that we see what we can produce. And when we see what we can produce, we can hold people accountable and make those adjustments before some of the horror stories, like this person has been working for me for 6 months and I haven't seen anything from them. Like, why did you wait that long? Right? Well, I just told them, go out there and do your best. How can we measure that their best and what you expect their best to be are the same, the same thing? And I think that is one of the biggest disconnect too. So this is an example of a scorecard, you guys, on number of activities and correlation. And we do have in the Albi site, right, Alex, we have the lead converter available that
I don't know if it's live yet, Michelle. Yeah, so we built it. I don't know if it's live yet, but we do have a converter coming out. Michelle could send out to all of you guys that will basically do the math for you. You'll put in a sales goal, and then it'll go down to how many leads do you actually need to generate, and all the way down to how many accounts do you actually need to call on. So then you could use that to calculate what your scorecard should be.
Absolutely, because people don't know that. And that is when I personally find it kind of laughable when people say, why aren't you expecting double of the sales from that person? I'm like, because there are metrics that will help me understand what is possible, right? First thing that I say is number of activities, right? Prospecting meetings tend to be 5% of the number of route stops. We're not going to have time to explain much of those here, so we're going to save that for the next webinar. But number of leads that can come from somebody managing 320 accounts, putting them through the sales funnel with the questions that need to be asked to qualify and quantify them to see whether or not they are your ideal referral source client, potential client, will lead to about 8 to 12 leads per month. Now, you needed to factor in your conversion between leads and job signed. Because if your conversion is 50%, now 8 is turning to 4, right? Those 8 to 12 are turning to 4 to 6. And multiplying by your average job size, if your average job size is 10,000, then you have a number. If your average job size is 5,000, then you have a number. If your average job size is 1,500, now you have another number. And that is going to help you see what that person can bring in. Because another thing that's important on scorecards is to help people control the controllables. And what are the controllables? Number of stops that they can make with the number of accounts that they are pursuing, and number of prospecting meetings, right? The meetings, the difference between a route stop and a meeting is whether or not you're able to fully qualify and quantify that account by the end of that engagement. Right? It's not about how many minutes I spend with somebody, but whether or not at the end of the conversation, I know if this is an ideal client for me moving forward. And these are what I love about data, and I geek out over data sometimes, is that it took me 17 years personally doing this countless times for different accounts in different regions, and also helping hundreds of restoration companies that I was in charge of to go through the numbers to see that this was literally the lowest common denominator on the type of activity, right? And every now and then I have a surprise like I'm having with a guy of mine, Nick, where on his second month, he was able to produce 21 leads following the same methodology, right? We made adjustments on his activity. We made it great. He was able to see great adjustments in his results. So do you have a scorecard? This is an example. Feel free to connect with us and ask more questions because this is very, very important, but you need to know what is expected. Cost of job acquisition. That's another thing that some people don't know. Everything that all the costs associated with the person that's going to produce that job is part of your cost of job acquisition. So there's salary, tax, benefits, commission, referral fees, other costs like events, car, marketing material, anything that we need to put into that person to produce that dollar should be part of your cost of job acquisition. And there are different ways of looking at this. Number one, you start with 100% for the job minus your cost of goods sold. Whatever is left needs to go to profitability and cost of job acquisition. Or you can say, I do not want to pay more than 20% as a cost of job acquisition. We run the numbers for you and we see how much you can actually pay this person, which is another thing that people ask. What should the compensation be? It all depends, right? How are we going to answer that if we don't know the reality of your marketplace with conversions, with average job size, and with the possible revenue, right? So that's very important too. We need to connect the dots with these things so that we know how we're going to offer compensation and get people to see what they can potentially produce. And again, a lot of those metrics from the previous slide, they have to do with the first year, because the first year we're assuming that people either A, are not coming in with a pre-existing book of business, or B, that even if they are, chances are they're only going to keep between 50 to 60% because a lot of that is kept with the previous company as well, rightfully so. So we need to understand that so that we have those healthy expectations. It takes a greater number of seeds to produce a few number of trees that will then give us the fruit. All right. Okay. All right.
I wanted to interject real quick. In the chat, if you guys aren't following around the chat, I just put in how to calculate, if you don't have a CRM that does it already, how to calculate your average job size, how to calculate your closing rate. I also put in targets for closing rate. I also put in targets for average job size, so you get some realistic benchmarks. Michelle posted a link to a manual scorecard that we have. So if you don't have a CRM that has insights, or you don't have a CRM that gives you a customizable report, you can download that. And then I also put how much we budget for cost of acquisition, just from my experience. So hopefully that's helpful, but I didn't know if people are looking at the chat because as Ricelli is talking, I'm typing. So.
And I have Robert Simmons raised his hand. Does he have a question?
Yeah, let's allow him to talk. I just did that. So Robert, you can talk and ask your question. I just allowed you to talk. You just have to unmute yourself.
Robert, you're muted.
Robert, if you want, you can ask your question in the chat if you're having issues with your microphone.
Yeah, we'll just put the questions in the chat till the end.
Awesome. Okay. So, and how are we going to coach people? All right. I believe in helping people to become employeepreneurs. And what is an employeepreneur? It's somebody who understands that because they have a base pay, there are expectations for what they need to do 9 to 5. And because they are on commission compensation as well, they have this entrepreneur role to what they do as well, right? So we want them to become the best version of themselves and continue to excel. So how are you going to do that? 15 minutes or a day in the huddle with them to celebrate, talk about top priorities, whatever help they need for that day. Weekly coaching so that you can review their scorecards, priorities, and assist them. Weekly sales meetings where we celebrate, we talk about priorities, we talk about feedback from the marketplace, and we talk about metrics like we've been talking about so far. That's very important that we use as an opportunity to coach people. And it's interesting because this always brings back to the question of how many hours is this going to take? There's a restoration owner, friend of mine, who is also a pilot. He says, you never ask a pilot how many years he has had his license for. You ask him how many hours of flying time he had, right? That's what determines if somebody's a good pilot. And this is what you can do with the time that maybe is needed. Factor in 15 to 20 minutes per day on your huddles with your sales team, the whole sales team, not one individual. Okay. If you have one person, you're going to be starting with that. 1 hour on weekly sales meetings, 1 hour for coaching with the BDM, because you want to make sure per week per BDM, because you want to make sure that you review the activity, you read the notes, right? And that's why I'm putting here 1 to 3 hours per week on prep. You read the notes so that you can provide feedback, so that you're holding people accountable and you're showing them that you are invested on their success. So considering this slide, my question to you as an owner, a restoration owner, is how many hours do you actually need to be the sales coach your team needs? Right? If you have one salesperson right now, currently, let's do the quick, easy math. You're going to need 15 minutes per day. So then we are at what? An hour and 15 minutes per week. Then you have the 1 week of sales meetings that can also be used as the coaching session, because you only had that one person, right? So now we're at 2 hours and 15 minutes, and maybe another hour for you to read reports. So for 3 hours and 15 minutes per week, you can be the sales coach that your team needs, if you have the system in place, and if you know how to coach them, and if you can speak from experience. And I just noticed that this picture here apparently is Rio de Janeiro, my hometown. That's cool. All right. Great stuff. Okay. So what are some tangibles that you should work on immediately leaving this session to become the sales coach that your team needs? My suggestion, first and foremost, make a list of the accounts that you want to start with. It's important that you can have some type of experience to share with your team and see the struggles and challenges that your team is going through when they are out there in your marketplace talking to people. Okay. Visit those accounts so that you can gain hands-on experience. Create a scorecard for yourself and track your results, right? Number of accounts that you need to produce the results that you want. And then implement the system with your sales team and track their results. That's what you need to do. And those are 4 things that I would personally do if I had to start all over again in a new territory. And that's the biggest takeaway that I can share with you guys, of something tangible you can implement right now to have this as a result for your team. Looking at the chat box here, question was about reviewing the metrics, which you have not answered. Thanks. Reviewing, which you now have answered. Okay, awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, it's important that you review the metrics. Otherwise, we can't hold people accountable and we can't make adjustments as well. And Robert, on that, I will share this. A lot of times when we review the metrics, what we see is that people are not producing what they should be producing because they are not doing what they should be doing. And when we make those small adjustments of activity, we see how the results correlate to a T with some of the things that we expect. All right. Okay, so Q&A right now, you guys. We have a couple minutes for Q&A, and then we're going to share something really exciting with you guys at the end of this meeting today. Or Alex, do you want to facilitate the Q&A?
I'd be honored to. So yeah, everyone, whoever has a question, you can either raise your hand and we can have you ask it live, or you could post it in the chat below. So it looks like Noah just hired a second salesman. I don't know if I'd call him a salesman, FYI, Noah. And this is a very timely webinar. I'm screenshotting like crazy. Oh, that was just feedback. So Noah, actually, well, we'll hold off. There's a special announcement for you as well, that I think could help, something that you can, empower your salesmen with. Business dev person. There you go. So Ricelli, I'll ask you a question. Tell me about the aspect of consistency. So I know earlier on somebody was mentioning something along the lines of it's hard to get them to keep pounding the doors and not look at short-term gains. So in your experience, on average, how many conversations does it take with an account to be able to get that account to turn into, you said, into a lead, into a referral source?
So the numbers are kind of crazy for the first year. And here's the reality of the numbers. For every 3 accounts you move through your sales funnel in the first year, you're going to get 1 lead per year. So if you're expecting that person to produce 8 to 12 leads per month. And a lead here is a job, an opportunity to sign a job, right? That person is going to have to be putting 320 accounts through their sales funnel. So they're going to have to be in and out of their car, visiting with accounts 80 times per week. Some people think that that's hard. Here's what I say. It's the job. It's what the job requires, right? So to answer your question, Alex, one can know after one conversation, talking to somebody, qualifying and quantifying them, whether or not they are an ideal client. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that person is willing to give you work at that point, because we need to understand that the people that we are going after have already previously established patterns of behavior, how they are handling things, whether it is using your competitor or sending to 1-800 claims number or this and that, right? And our job is to, number one, as business development people, to visit with people to see whether or not they meet our qualifications of who I want to get business from. Number one, that can take one meeting or 3 stops. And number two, get their buy-in through engagement, relationship building, and strategic approaches to sales to see what we need to do, what they would expect of us in return for giving us that one opportunity.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
those
The
are
other
metrics.
key thing I would mention is it takes time. So you mentioned 320 and you mentioned 8 stops a week, right? So I assume the limiting factor of the 320 accounts is you want to consistently be visiting those 320 accounts every 4 weeks, right? Versus most salespeople, what I've found is they just want to spray like crazy and they'll go wide. Like I've had a salesperson scoop up 800 accounts and put their name on it in the CRM, but they weren't consistently building relationships with them. So then it just didn't turn into anything.
Yeah,
so I think
that doesn't work.
coaching them and motivating them on the consistency of having consistent conversations is very important.
Very important.
So Greg mentioned, how do you throttle back your sales staff yet keep them engaged when your operations at capacity temporarily due to like an influx of jobs, storms, stuff like that? So we're super swamped and we don't want more sales, but the sales are coming in anyway.
That's a tough one. And we know that once we start neglecting accounts, they're going to go to work with our competitor. And once they start working with our competitor, for us to regain their business, much harder, right? So how do we keep people motivated? I think that one of the opportunities that we have is to train people to actually perform the job at some instances where they can be the first point of contact and actually show up and sign the job and get something started. And I have seen that as one of the biggest successful tools with big storm events where BDMs were literally the ones waking up at 3 a.m. in the middle of a snowstorm to go help their clients. It helped them to strengthen the bonds with their clients because the clients were like, dude, you actually showed up personally, right? But the impacts that will have on your business later on, if you cannot deliver, that is something that I think each company has to make a hard assessment of how they are going to be handling these things. Because it's when we make promises that we can't deliver, it's not about having your salespeople be excited while ops is struggling. It's about having your clients not fall through the cracks and go with somebody else because you couldn't deliver on what you promised them.
Yeah. I was talking with Jeff Moore from ATI. He's the president, and now he handles all the acquisitions. And he was telling me that the most valuable part of a restoration business is actually the restoration business that does referral-based marketing. And the reason is obviously it's very repetitive and you're going to get a bunch of work from one referral source. At our restoration company, everything else turned off. Like if you're doing a mix of vendor work versus non-vendor work, like your most valuable source of revenue is going to be the insurance agent, plumber, property management referrals. So the first thing I would do during cat mode is like turn off Google. Like you could afford one Google bad review and that'll hurt a lot less than one insurance agent that's referring you work. So like there's metrics in there that you can do, or you can say, hey, for insurance agents, plumbers, property managers, our response time is 60 to 90 minutes. For everybody else, it's 24 to 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that we did was a job spiking method where during cap mode, instead of doing all the work, we went out and we did more stabilization. And then we followed in the back end with the actual demo just to expand the amount of volume we did. So instead of doing work typically like you would show up and actually extract water, remove everything, tear everything up and dry it, we would go out, extract, pump out the water, drop dehues off, and then prioritize different people for demo within the next couple of days. So hope that helps.
Yeah, triage process.
Yep. So Noah, how much should I let a BD person find their own lead sources versus telling them to go after X blank potential clients?
I'm reading this too.
So if I go in and I say, hey, go after plumbers or go after agents, or I just say, hey, Ricelli, just go after whatever, bring in business.
I think that that's a tough one because then there's no metrics associated with anything, right? So at the end of the day, when I'm telling people find their lead sources, what I'm guiding them on is just they create a list of 320 accounts that fits the type of people we want to get business from: plumbers, HVAC, property managers, insurance agents. And now we're going to create static routes for you where you're going to be visiting with those people. This is the message. These are the questions that you need to ask for us to see if those people are right for our business and what we can potentially get from them. Yeah, that's what I would do. I give them no specifics on what I expect, and then I help them to go after those numbers and create their list so that they can start putting those accounts through the process.
Yep. And no, I think that's a strategic decision that you as the owner need to make, because there's a lot of caveats. Like, do you really want to go after property managers? Are you ready to take on commercial work? Like that decision is strategic from you as the owner. In Chicagoland, for example, we did not want to pay 13% for a plumbing lead. So we did not go after plumbers. And you don't want your reps making those decisions on their own and then going after something and getting you involved into something that maybe doesn't align with your company. So
yeah.
Robert, we'll get to your question here shortly and we'll continue Q&A, but just I'm glad actually most of the people stuck around so far. I love the engagement. We do have a sales mastery boot camp coming up in Chicago. It's in September. Michelle, if you could drop the link here for everyone that's interested. But Ricelli, if you could tell us a little bit about the class and kind of what it does. All I know is that it filled up our offices here at Albee with the last one, and people were absolutely clamoring over the class. So I'm glad to host you here again.
How about if I don't tell you guys, but I share rather what people had to say? I think you guys are going to love to see what people had to say about this class, and then I will definitely tell you more about it. But let's see.
I would even send more of my own team members here. I thought it was invaluable.
A lot of tips, a lot of insight into asking the right questions and getting to, the yes, essentially, or setting clear deliverables and having an expectation going forward with all of our prospects and not leaving a meeting empty-handed or wondering what comes next.
She's fantastic. She keeps you interested and she makes it really relatable rather than just reading from a book or something. She'll give you some structure and then relate it to personal life or real life situations, and it's really relatable.
I saw the first of our owner emailed it over to us, and then I read through it, did a little bit of research on Ricelli and Albee. I really like what we saw, and this is an area of need for Clean Sweep. And I thought that it could benefit us greatly. 10 out of 10 would recommend 100%.
Wow, good job, Michelle, and the marketing team for that little video.
Yeah, absolutely. The team did amazing. But here's what's amazing about this event, you guys. If you want to come to a place where your team can be trained to take more ownership and produce more, we had a mix on this last class of owners and managers and business development people. And the business development people, the feedback, because we're still going through fourth session, 4 week of follow-up with them, because this is a 2-month boot camp program. What they have been saying is that has helped them to come back to the marketplace with the clear strategy behind what they needed to do to produce the results they needed to produce. So 2 days live in Chicago, followed by 2 months of weekly follow-ups on Zoom, where we are going to extend the life of the material for you. And we're going to be able to tell you more about what's needed for you to do to produce the results that you want to produce, and go over the sales funnel strategies, the questions you need to ask, but really pouring value back to you and your business so that people can manage themselves. because there are clear metrics. And it's so funny because one of the people that I'm working with from this training went back to his boss and said, okay, this is the scorecard you need to hold me accountable to. This is what we need to discuss every week. And the shift, right, in taking ownership of what needed to be done.
Yeah, I'm super excited. It's going to be here at Albee headquarters in beautiful Oak Brook, Illinois. So we'll get to spend some time together. Also, the team here, Daisy, she's our event planner here. She feeds you guys really well. It's going to be a great experience. You guys can come also take a look behind the scenes at our development team, talk to some of our product people here, and a bunch of other restoration like-minded folk here. So excited to potentially have you guys here.
Yeah, absolutely. Noah, to answer your question, so Noah was asking, would we break it down, the visits by category, one person after public entities? I prefer to do it geographically if we're trying to go over 320 accounts, unless we see that some people in our team are not suited for certain marketing verticals, right? If they're not suited for commercial, putting them to commercial is not going to be a good thing. If they are more of the electrician, plumbers, that's when I will make those adjustments, Noah. But thank you for the question.
And I think there was one more question. How much weight would you say I should place on sales experience, overall alignment to our company's core values? What's
That's
more
a fun
important?
because it's what's important for the company, right? I think that if a person doesn't align with your values, would you want them representing your brand out there in the marketplace?
Boom. Yeah, the core values is important. I hired well, in both, I hired a fire chaser at Romex there, and I hired another one here at Albee, and sleazy salespeople with great, Wolf of Wall Street experience, that if that's not your core value and that's not your culture, they're not going to fit. So I'd say core values is way more important than sales experience, but ideally you should have both. But yeah, James even said the same thing. Matching core values kicks experiences butt every time. Amen. Amen. Drew chimed in too. Core values are far superior. We've got
All right.
a great group of people here.
We did. So do we just say goodbye to them, or do I stay for another minute for a last question?
Yeah, shoot over any last questions, guys.
Yeah, last call for any questions.
And then Michelle's going to keep us on time.
Noah wants the invite. Yeah, Michelle will, you'll receive email blast just like you received the email for this event, this webinar, you'll receive that. And yeah, Drew will make sure to get you that scorecard. Michelle, jot Drew's name down and make sure you get it to him. So
we'll update the links and all that. So Drew, I will write down your information and send that to you once the link is updated.
Got it. Awesome. David also wants the scorecard too. And Drew says, thank you. Great. Can't wait to see you guys at the next webinar.
Yes. And we'll see some of you, if not all of you, in Chicago next month. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
work,
Have a
Ricelli.
good one. Bye.